Hello, very good evening. In today's lecture, we will be designing a complete website from scratch. We will be using a simple blog layout as shown here. This is a simple blog website that we will be creating. This is our project 2 in our CSS lab manual. In this, basically, you have to design this complete web layout with headers, menus, and header image, content area, sidebar, and so on and so forth. So we will be designing this from scratch, from very basics, and we will try to go through it in a simple form as we can so that you understand how you can create any website. So the structural flow, the designing and the development methodology basically follows and is implemented for every other website that you want to design. So it should be easily transferable. The most important thing is learning the concepts, that where to start to build a particular website, how to apply CSS, when to apply CSS, which CSS are required, and how do we structure the content area and create a final blog that looks nice and appealing. Okay, my name is Dr. Shanbadi. Now, in order to develop this particular website, basically what you need to do is you need to understand the basic components that are residing within this. So in this case, I've laid out the basic structure. So if you have this layout or any other website you want to create, first work with the design aspects of it. So what are the design and the requirements of that particular website? So in this case, the requirement is that it has to have few blogs inside it. So it can have a home, my blog, my resume, contact information as the links, and it needs to represent the continuous blog posts. Then because it's supposed to be a blog website, the layout is basically quite simple. We have a header, a navigation, a top image, a div bar, and then a main content area, the sections and articles area, and then the footer area that might have some additional information. Okay, so in previous lecture, I discussed about the structuring using HTML and HTML5 components. So this is what we have done here is, so you will note that this is a header, and this time inside the header, I have placed the navigation bar. Okay, so in this case, my navigation bar would be inside my header. Then I would have an image area that can be resided inside my header as well, or I can have it as a separate div tag. So I've put it in a separate div. Then I come here into my main section areas. So within my main section area, as you can see, I've written section here. Within my section area, I have an article and I have an aside. Okay, so within my one section, I have an article and I have an aside that contains information about this particular article. Then at the bottom, I have a footer area that again contains 3 different divs which are having some different informations. So this is the structure of my website that I need to create. Okay, so let's begin and let's start to work with that. So if I come into my web browser, click on new, and I close all of the files because I will be using this as a fresh, and here we go. Okay, and I save this as save as, and I go back into my same folder website that I've been working with, and I name it as my blog.html. Okay, simple web page, my blog.html, and I have my HTML code. What I do here is I write document type type, and before I do that, exclamation mark, type type is equals to HTML. Now again, this is a simple metadata that we need to write. So I come back here, oops, HTML backslash, and I come back here. Okay, Control S, make sure I save it as I go along, and then I give it a head tag. Inside the head tag, I write title tag. Okay, and in my title, I specify my blog page. Okay, and here we go. So I have my basic components being laid out. Then after the head tag, we specify the body tags. Here we go. Control S, and my website is basically starting to work. Now remember, the structural flow allowed me to have the basic components. So I would have a header. Within my header, I would have navigation. Then I would create a div tag that will be placed with a particular image, or whatever image I want. And then you can change it to a carousel and have JavaScript and put multiple images with it. We will talk about that some other time. Then these sections. So we start to program with that respect. Into my blog page. Now, the first thing we did was we gave it a head tag and we specified what we do. Sometimes again, let's just include one other code called meta character set is equals to brackets, and we specify it as UTF-8. Okay, backslash close. Now, this is again a metadata. We make it a habit of including these metadata tags because they would be used in our websites more commonly and more oftenly. Okay, so we specify this metadata that my character set that's going to be used in this particular blog is this. Similarly, there are other metadata tags. We will be using them as we go along. This is just one simple thing that we specify. If you don't specify it, again, no problem. This is just information to the browser that what basically is going to happen in my code. After that, let's go get back into the body tag. Now, within my body tag, I would have my header tag first of all. Okay, and this is where my header information would go. Then this header tag would also be having information like, for example, my navigation bar. Okay, and this is where my navigation would go. But before that, I need the components to work as well. So if I come back into my design, okay, so this is the header area. Within this header area, I have to have my logo and component title, and then the navigation bar. So what I can do here is I can create another div, because that's what sometimes allows us to control the components in more appropriate manner. I specify an image src, and currently I don't have any image selected, so let me just close it at this particular point. Okay, so here we go. So now we have an image tag, and after the image I specify, for example, the heading one tag. Heading tag can be, for example, my or in fact I can write Zishan blogs, right? So this is my blogs available. Within this too, I can give another heading. This is my personal blog site. So whatever tag you want to basically specify. Now if I save it, click on the the live button, so it shows me the output. So I have a Zishan's blog within my header tag, and it's already available. Now what you need to understand is that we want to have that as a wrapper. So once I come into this code here, this entire header has to be in a one container. Okay, so one thing we sometimes do is, and that container needs to be in a code. So what sometimes we do is we specify another div tag here, Control X, and I put this inside the div here. Okay, so now this div here becomes my header. So I give exclamation mark minus header content area, and then backslash this thing. So I gave it a comment, header content area. So this is my header content area. First I divide it inside a div. Inside a div I write a header. Okay, and then I can use other components that are basically going to be specified. So I can have multiple components other than header here. So hopefully that would work. So now if I press S, again I get a simple information available for my components. Then let's just come back into the navigation tab, and let's just create unordered list, and inside the unordered list I create the list items. Okay, and then the list item needs to have an anchor tag with href is equals to brackets, and for now I'm just going to use the hash. Let me close the anchor tag, and this can be, for example, my home link. Okay, and then Control C, Control V, Control V, Control V. And let's just change this to from home. For example, it can be a blog, it can be a resume, and it can be a, for example, contact. Okay, so for now I leave the links into hash, because again these are just supposed to be dummy right at the moment. So inside the div I have a header. Now I will be using this div for my CSS, and I will explain in a moment how we basically set that up. Okay, so once we have that available, that's there. Okay, now let's just give a CSS, because the display area is quite simple. So I create a new file, Control S, and give this as a main bsit. I go inside the same folder where I saved my HTML, and let me give it as a blog style style.css. Okay, so blog style.css becomes my CSS file. Now I go back into my HTML, go inside the head tag where I write all these components. Let me write the link tag. Okay, and then let me type the relation to be style sheet, and then we specify type to be text/CSS, and then we specify the href is equals to, and this is going to be blog CSS style, and I close the HTML tag. Okay, so here we go. We have a link for my external CSS. Okay, so what we did now is we created a simple header, gave it a few links. Then inside my head tag, I created a link tag. This link will be connected to my external CSS. Okay, so this will allow me to have a CSS created separately that would be function and that will be used for designing purpose. Okay, so once we are done with this thing, now we go back into my CSS. So once we have this available, okay, we have the header main content area div tag. So if I just put it here, so this is like the main div area. Within this div we have the header. Inside the header we have created one div with image. So let's just go and find some image here as well. So I think I have an image available somewhere in my pictures. I can use, for example, this one. Okay, and I just, yeah, I think that should do the trick. So I just come back here, go inside the images folder and paste it, and let me just rename it checkup. Okay, so I have this image available. So I go back inside my code and give it as images /checkup.png. So this image file is already loaded. So now if I go back here, hopefully I have this image. Now the problem with this image is that it's too big. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to correct the image format as well. So we can come here and we can give it width, width, width is equals to, I can specify, for example, 20 pixels. That should be, for example, in a brackets, that should be in a brackets and space. So what this will do, it will make it 20 pixels. I think this is too small. So let's just make it 100 pixels. Now what we need to do is we need to go into the style. So what we do is we go back into blog style. We go and we give it some style aspects to it. So one thing we do is we give the, I like to sometimes have a comment. So backslash, this can be my header and backslash, okay, header styles. In CSS, in order to give comments, we use backslash star and backslash slash. This is more familiar to JavaScript or Java language if you're coming from there. Comments is again something nice that allows you to tell you that what basically exactly you think you are trying to do. So once we come into header, I use header because remember we have already used a header tag, bracket start, bracket close. Now what should be the header color? So for example, I can say background color can be Seek. I think this was the color that we had in mind. Okay, so that's my background color already done. So we set it a background and the background color is now set. Then we go back quickly into my code. In this case, now I have a div. So I give this div as class, for example, main underscore title title. Now this is the div that contains the main text area, okay, and separated from the navigation. So this div I've given it a particular name, save it, then I go back into my code. Okay, inside this code now we basically need to give it main options. So I have a header already specified. Then I come back here and I use, for example, dot main, dot main underscore title, block start, block close. This main title needs to be display, and I want the display to be inline block. Okay, so what this would basically mean that it will make sure that the contents are inlined with a block format. I will talk about, let me just give a few more things to it and it should be clear. Then I have a header space h1 block start block close. Now header h1 basically means that inside the header tag we have an h1 tag. So inside a header tag, inside the header tag we already have something called h1. So whatever h1s we have inside the header will have this particular styles available to it. In this thing I can say, for example, font, I can specify font family, font name, whatever you basically want to do. In this case, let me just give it font size, for example, 2.5 em $, and then I can say, for example, font weight, I think -w, weight is equals to normal, so it doesn't look too big. Okay, so here you go, you have a font, and then obviously you can change the fonts. I don't tend to remember the font's name that often. Now what I do is I come back into the image and I give this image as an ID is equals to bracket start, bracket close. For example, this can be my logo. Okay, now I've used an ID here instead of style. Let me show you one other trick that we do with CSS as well. So once you have an ID specified here with a particular image, what it will allow you to do is that if I come back into my blog post, I can use something called hash logo. So this basically means instead of a class, now we are using it directly as a what we call as an ID, and we are referring to that ID. Also I can say go into h1. star block close. Now what we have done here is, it's a different way of using CSS. Here, instead of specifying the class name, we have specified the ID name. So whoever or whatever object has this ID name, apply it on there regardless of the class. Same thing, h1 and comma h1. Now what this is basically doing, we are applying the same style on the two different tags. Same style on the two different tags. Same style, we can repeat it or we can just give a multiple names here. So what happening here is, it's a multiple name. Find an ID with a logo and find a header which has h1 inside it. And what we need to do with that is, we need to display them in line dash blocks, right, semicolon. So what this now happens, as soon as I do it, you can see this, that output is continuously changing, right? So keep an eye on your output here as well. So as soon as I write inline block, now what happens, that the logo basically pops in front of the component as an inline block code. Then we specify the margins bottom, I think, and because we need to reduce that margin as well, so I can specify, for example, 0 pixels. So now you would note that there's a 0 pixel margin, so that blue dot area is disappeared and the content or the subtitle has actually moved up a little bit. Okay, so again, this is just a simple designing aspects that you want to do with that. Once we are done with that, now basically we need to work with this header too. So what I do is, I go inside the header, header header h2. So wherever I have a h2 header, what we need to do is, we can change the font of it. Again, I can change the font size. In this case, I want 1.1 em. Okay, and once I have that, I can go inside the margin, and margin top can be, for example, I want it to be reduced, so that, hang on, 0 pixel. Now what 0 pixel means, that this margin here at the top is gone. So if I say, for example, 10, so there's a margin here. If I specify 110, so before this content there's a margin, but I don't want this margin, so it appears right next to it. So I set the margin top to 0. Then I can also give font weight, font dash weig weight is equals to, I can say, normal. What that should do is that it should appear as a normal font rather than bold. Okay, so this is what we do with the header styles. So I specify the logo, I made sure that it's an inline block. What this would do is that the two components that were previously on two different lines are now in line as two separate blocks. Similarly, I set certain font size and font weights of my components, and I get the first impression done for my section. Alright, so the first impression is basically done here. Let's move to the navigation bar now. Now, in order to set this to navigation bar, I come back here and type the code. Okay. And let's go back into the navigation. So for the navigation, again, I would use a comment and backslash and navigation style. For a navigation style, now what we need to do is, we need to ensure that my navigation menu appears in this particular order, not in this, where's my output gone? Here it is, right? So currently navigation is not looking good. We need to make sure it looks something like this as it's specified here. So in order to do that, again, we need to work with the CSS. Okay, so if I go back here and bring this navigation a little bit higher, the first thing we work with is the nav tag. Inside the nav tag, we say that, okay, give me the display again, colon, inline, and I will use a block. This is something that I tend to use a lot. So what this basically means, that display will mean that I want the components or two components to be inline in a block form. Rather than displaying on the new line, just make it top. So whatever the components ended here, the next component automatically comes on top of it. Okay, so the first thing we did was making sure that my text is appearing in front of it. To do that, inline block is the way to do that. Width, I can specify that, for example, 700 pixels. This is something that you would have to tweak a little bit to see how much pixels you need in order for this to work. So if I move it, now you see it's upward here, and after a certain point it just goes back inside it. Okay, so you just have to work with this thing a little bit, 700 pixels, or you can specify in terms of percentage as well, depending how you want to do that. For now, let me just come back here and use it to this particular point, so I know my contents are displayed. Oops, okay, so I think I can, if I use it in pixels, 70%, 60%, that should do the trick. Oops, it's going back here. 50%. Oops, I want it to be here, right? Now it's here. So basically it will cover 50%, and then we will tweak this value later on. So again, this is a positioning thing that we have to manually work with that. That's when, that is why sometimes the Bootstrap or Flex, these are, or Tailwind are more preferable frameworks that we use for CSS, because they design everything and the placement actually is automatically corrected in those things. In this case, we are actually tweaking these values to see that how much or how the components look. Okay, then I would say text align, text dash align can be right, because I want the text to appear on the right side. Okay, so that's my navigation menu already appearing on the right side. So next we need navigation dot list items. Okay, so within this list item, again I would say display, and this display again needs to be inline block, so all the components within this appear in the same thing. Margin is, I think we need to set right or left, right, I think, because we have a right side. Margin right needs to be 10 pixel, maybe 20 pixel, sorry, 20 pixel. I guess for now it seems okay, but again these are the values that we can tweak and play as we go along later on. So I have now menus already set for me. So as you can see, this, my options are basically appearing in a nice way. Display inline block basically allows us to correct. So if I remove it, see, it appears in the line. But if I give the display value as inline block, which basically means that I want each component to appear in a single line as a separate block. So it just organizes things to a certain nice way. So once we have the navigation list available, now I need the navigation anchor. So inside the navigation tag, there is something called a tag. Go inside this a tag and create the font dash size. I think let's just increase it to 1.3 estimated value. Okay, and then this should increase the font size a little bit, or maybe let's just go, for example, 1.5, depending on how big or small the font you want it to be. The color can be whatever color you like. Now in this case, I think we had used a black, but I can use dark gray, or just use a black for now, I guess. Semicolon. Now I want padding bottom, and this can be, for example, 5 pixels. Okay, now padding means that whenever the component starts, the bottom area of that padding, how much it should be. So I'm leaving few pixels at the bottom, so there is some space after it. Again, just something so that after the option there is some space available for my menu. Finally, it has an underline. I don't like that underline, so I can say text decoration is equals to none. Okay, so once you do that, again the underlines are all gone, and now you have a link set up similar to your menu. Got it? So see, the designing aspect is again very important, how you design your components and how you work with that. So we place the code just to ensure that my segments are very nicely managed. Okay, so once I have the code, there's nothing happening. Sometimes we also tend to do this, that we have a navigation. Inside navigation we have an anchor tag, and we specify a event to it. Okay, so to specify a certain event, we use this double colon. This means that A has an event hover, so whenever we move the cursor over this event, something should happen. For example, in this case, I will just change the color to light or dark gray. Okay, so from black it should change to dark gray. So now my links appear more real time and active. I can obviously change the background of it. I've shown you previous videos of creating menus. You can check those out. Depends on how you want to do that. One other trick we do is we have a border dash bottom, and we can specify a border at the bottom, for example, for 3 pixels, and it can have a solid, and it can have a particular color as well. So for example, the color can be blue. Let me see how it goes. And if I move it here, so we have a blue color at the bottom as well. Okay, or inside a blue I can say light green. Okay, so light green matching the logo color, I have a light green color. Done. So now you see that my website is basically coming into positioning just by using the CSS. Once we are there, now let's go back into the code and complete the code for our website. Okay, so now we have this div tag. Let me just name this as class is equals to bracket start main WRA wrapper. Okay, so this becomes my main wrapper. I have a header. So after the header, let me just create another div. Okay, now this is the div for my particular image, this one. Okay, so in this I will set up a particular image, and then that has a certain title or a button to it if that's required. Okay, so once I have this div, what I do is I create another div for the second the image or the second components inside it, and in this side image I specify my plans for holiday or whatever I want to specify here. Then I come back here and I can insert a link, or for this particular case I will just insert an image in this way, right? So I specify an image src is equals to bracket start bracket close and backslash my image is closed, control S. Okay, now this image I can have it as a link as well. In order to have it as a link, I can specify this as a tag. So once I click on this image, something should happen. So I specify, or I can specify this inside my link here. Okay, and this can be my H reference to a particular location. Okay, image. So let's just find a particular image. So I come back here and images, and here I can say header for locations, and here we go. I think I can use this image. Yeah, that should do the trick. So let me just save image as and bring it to my this image header or location.jpg. Okay, so I've saved this image exactly in the same folder where I had my files. So now I go back into the code and I can use locations.jpg, save it, and I have my code. Okay, and where's my output gone? It's not loaded. Okay, so basically I need to specify images/locations and still not working. Images/ okay, location dot spelling mistake, control S, and now we have the location. So once I have the location, I come inside the div tag and let me give it a class. For example, class is equals to, this can be my banner underscore image. So I can specify this as my banner image, and then I have a subdiv created, and then I can specify this as class is equals to banner underscore description, right? Banner description. So I created two divs, one for main image, and then I want an overlay for it. So I create two different banners for it. I specify some text on it, and then I put an image inside a particular link. Okay, once I have that, now I just move forward. So after this div, let me just go back, and then now we need to insert the sections. So we insert the section tag and we close it. Now the main content area of my page are supposed to go. Within this section tag, I would include, for example, something called articles. So I would use article tag, close it. Here's one of my articles. Within this article, we need to specify the content area. Okay, so this is the article. This article also has a logo sided. Okay, and then the title with it. So we come back here, and then I use something as we added with the previous other components. I specify an H1. Okay, so this becomes my heading one, but inside this heading I use an image tag. I specify src is equals to and bracket start bracket close and then backslash image is closed. Okay, so and then I can specify the my whatever basically I'm using. So my next trip to USA, for example. Okay, so my next trip to USA, and my image is there. Inside this image, I can go and use any particular logo that I want. So let me just go back inside the images / and let me use this checkup logo. but this time the width I can specify to be even smaller, so maybe 60 pixel should do the trick. So I have a logo with a 60 pixels, or maybe even smaller, 50. I can use any other logo for that purpose as well. Okay, so now my content area is starting to be created. So I have an article that has that particular heading inside it. After this heading, now I need to specify the paragraph tag as the component, and this can be, for example, my heading or subheading or catchphrase. Okay, so anything that you want to specify here. Once you do that, I come back here and I specify another paragraph tag. Okay, this is second paragraph, that's more description and my blog content, etc, etc. Once I have that, I can create as many paragraphs as I like. This is an other paragraph content area, and so on and so forth, and you can fill it with dummy text for now if you want to. Okay, so once you have this main area, which is basically this content area, fill it with certain contents. Now let's just create a sidebar. To create the sidebar, we come inside the articles and we come outside it, and I give it a side. So what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to create the components, and then I will design the CSS for each components as we go along. Okay, so once we have it here, again, this was my image article, and inside the section. So inside the section, I created article. Inside this article, I created heading, few paragraphs, and then the article was closed. So we create another sidebar. Once we are at the sidebar, we need to give some information. Like, for example, it's supposed to be, if I can bring this component back up, here we go, and close it. So I need to see what basically doing. So this is my sidebar. So this sidebar again needs to have, for example, an H1 heading. Oops, H1 as a heading, and let me just get rid of this. Okay, so this H1 is need to be about the AUTHR author, and then it has to have an image inside it. Okay, so I create an image tag and src, enter, and then let me just close the image. Now this image again has to be any particular image. So what I do in this particular case is I give images, and then I think we have a default avatar image, so I give that default avatar image. Again, I use a width, oops, width, width is equals to, for this thing, let me just go with 100 pixels, and then we see how we can adjust this 100 pixels later on. Okay, so currently I'm focusing on this particular content area. So I have an image and I can give it a particular component. Let's just do one thing, give it a class, or sometimes, like I said, we use ID as well. So ID can be arrow, or in my notes I've written it as an arrow for whatever purpose, so we have it as an arrow. Okay, so we give it this heading as an H1, we give it image as this image inside a sidebar, which is this a sidebar. Okay, hopefully that should be explainable. Then we need to have two paragraphs inside this thing. So inside the sidebar, we come here and we give a paragraph. This is description of the author in para 1. Okay, and I create another paragraph. This is description for para 2. Voila. Okay, so I have a second paragraphs available. Then we need these icons. Again, for these icons, what we do is we create a simple image tag, but this time instead what I do is I create a paragraph tag. Okay, and then inside this paragraph tag, let me create an image, src, and then voila, close it. Okay, so obviously you can find these logos on internet and you can include these logos here. In our case, if I need to find this logo, or I can just save this as an image and use it here. Let's just use it, find an image here. Okay, social media icons. Okay, If I do that, here you go, you have all these social media icons. And for our purpose, let me just say save image and save it inside the same images folder. But this time I actually don't need all of this. Okay, we need to crop this image, sorry. So what we can do is we can copy this image, go inside Paint, save it here, select the image bar and select a particular image, hit a crop, file, save as, and making sure you go inside the same folder where you have your codes available. Where is my code available? In images, and then I can say FB, okay, PNG, then Control Z, go back to the default pose, and I can have a Twitter, sorry, I can have a Twitter here, and then again I hit a crop, file, save as, and then I can say TW, and this is save, again Control Z, and I can have all these images, right? So this is the one quick way of me using the internet images. And then I can say Insta and save it, and you get the idea, right? So you just save it, so I'm not going to spend too much time here. So once I come here, I go back inside my images, and inside this I have a Facebook, and what I need to do is I need to ensure that I give it a particular ID so that I can control the components, okay? Or maybe just Control C, Control V, Control V. This is Facebook, TW Twitter, and INST Insta PNG. Okay, so that should just create this particular layout. So I've used 3, you can use as many as you want. We can control the height and width and the size using different components. Okay, currently I have not set them to the link. You can set them to the link as well. So the once I click on this, it becomes an active link. So to do that, we use an A tag, but as I said, it's now self-explanatory. So once we have these components available, voila, our section is already complete. Okay, once this section is complete, let me look at the page and see this, we have the content area already available to us. Wonderful. Now let's just go back into CSS. This is without CSS. Let's go back into CSS. And now let's work with the CSS code for it. Now we had done the CSS for our navigation style. So we had a navigation, we did the navigation for that. Now after navigation, let's just come into the banner first. So I come here and let me give comment, question mark, banner style style and question mark. Sorry, this is just like that. Okay, so for the banner, what we need to do is I have my banner image, and I need to work with this banner image as a first. So first, let me just go back, and I had my class banner image, okay, and I have a banner description. So I have already div tags. These two have banner class and banner divisions available. So I come back here and I say dot banner underscore imag image block start block close. So whichever class has a banner image inside it, use these styles. So for example, in this case, let me start with margin. Margin top can be 15 pixels. Okay, so we give this thing, and then let me just give a semicolon, px. Now what this basically means that there will be some space at the top. You can monitor it. 10 pixel or 15 pixel, depends on how much pixel gap you want at that particular point. Then I can specify the height, height, height of this particular image. Now this is again interesting. 100 pixels should do the trick. This is 100 pixels. So as soon as I give the height, see this, the components are overlapping. I can do that. Maybe 200 pixels should do the trick, and then I can control the remaining aspects of it. Border, border dash radius, something I need the border to curl up. So if I say 5 pixels, that should curl up and give me a border around it. Background color, I want again to be my basic, so it appears to be in the same format. And then position this component or as a relative to my previous sections. So that would be relative to the previous component that my position needs to be. Sometimes we tend to give this CSS style box shadow. Okay, what this basically means that I need to have that box shadow kind of an effect, if you may get it. So for that, basically I need to have it on a 0 pixel with 4 pixel value, and then with 4 pixel value, and then it needs to be dark gray. Okay. Okay, so now as you can see that we got the image, we got the shadows, and we got this corner rounded off, but the image is still not being positioning properly. So one thing we can do further is let me just add a margin at the bottom and see if it can be corrected. 25 pixels, maybe I think. So this is again something that we need to play around with to see what is the exact value that we need to give. Okay, so it depends on how you want to design your website. So spaces is something that you just have to play around with. So for now, for example, if I give 30 pixels, it should be okay. So after this header, I have some space here available. We can change that later on. Okay, but still the image is basically not being corrected. Now according to my poster, the image should be in this pretty perfect order. Okay, so one cool trick that we can do is we can assign this image as a background to this thing. Yeah, let's do that. I think this is what exactly this guy has done here as well. Okay, so what you can do is you can come here, instead of giving it a background color, let me just say background image. Okay, so background image, and or in fact, let's just not use image at all. Just give it a background and then give it a URL. Okay, semicolon. Now within the URL, basically we need to specify the location of this particular image, which is my images, and I think this was my location. Okay, so now you can see this, that the background images are very accurately captured within this particular div tag. So what we did here is we created a banner image class. So if I go back inside my code and scroll up, this is my banner image class. So this is the div which is basically being displayed here at the bottom. So instead of assigning it a color, I assigned it an image. So no matter what the size of the image is, that image automatically wrapped around that particular div. Okay, based on the specifications that we have provided here. So the top height, these 200 pixels. So for example, if I make it 300 pixels, so now the div is 300 pixels and image is wrapped around that particular image. So it automatically adjusts and creates a very nice impression. So if I decrease it to, for example, 100, so now you see that image is wrapped around that particular div. Obviously we have this image in the front. Let me remove it, and then hopefully it will be more clear. So if I come back here, let me remove this image for now. Okay, and Control S, and now you can see that image is basically wrapped around that particular div. So it creates a very nice clear illusion. So instead of giving image in your HTML using image tag, I gave an image through my CSS using background and a URL property. Okay, so background image, I can use that as well, or you can just specify a background, give a URL, image location. Now what this basically means that it creates an image at the background. Now here we have, as you can see this, if you zoom into it, there is a repeat image available. So the same image, because the image was not long enough, so it had one image and the remaining portion was repeat. So it's a tiling or repeating. You can give it, for example, brackets, no repeats, REPEAT, repeat. And what this will do, it will ensure that the image doesn't repeat. But again, that means that this area has remained blank. So it depends on how you want to apply this feature. In my case, I prefer this to be a repeat. So I said, okay, I don't mind you repeat it so that my the header looks complete because my image is smaller. Okay, so here we go. So now we have image set. Again, this is 100 heights, 100 heights. So if I set it to 200, now I get a very nice 200 image. Or if I can have a 250, so you can see this, now I have a very nice image. So sometimes we set an image as a header image, not from your HTML, but from your CSS. So do keep that thing in mind. Okay, next, if we go back inside the code, you see we need this black bar. So this is now we configure with my code here. So if I go back into the code, this is what basically this banner should do. So my plans for the holiday. So if I come back here, this is the text that I wrote with a black overlay, and I believe there was a button here. If I zoom out, yeah, so there's a button here. Okay, so instead of using a button, what I will do is I will create a CSS for this anchor tag, and I will use the button here. And at this moment, see this, there's a small arrow here. Okay, so for that small arrow, let me go and find my browser, and I should have an image of an arrow somewhere. So if I go back, and in my drive, I have somewhere, Pictures. Yes, icons, web arrows, and I have small arrows here. So this is a small arrow. I don't know if you can see it. If I can increase the size of this icon, so you can see this is a small arrow that we use. So if I could just copy it, bring into my IT morning images, and I paste it here. Okay, so this is a small arrow image that I use, which will basically be this arrow image, this small arrow image that we see here, right? So this is a small arrow. I already have it, so I will use it. The rest of the button I will create using CSS. So I go back inside my code, and this is the anchor tag image, and what I do with this is I say go inside the images, and there is a small arrow image PNG, Control S. If I come here, there's a small arrow there. All right, so you can see that small arrow. I have my plans for holiday. This is the text that's being displayed here. Now let's just bring it as a bar on this thing. So what I do is, remember I have created two classes, banner images and banner description. So for the banner description, this one, where's my code? This banner description, I will use this code here. Okay, so come back into CSS, and now I will create banner underscore des description very quickly, and now we specify the CSS for that particular description. The first thing we start with is the position, and I want it to be obsolete so that it appears exactly at the same point no matter what. The bottom, bottom needs to be at 0. Okay, so this is, now you can see this has moved at the 0 pixels within that particular div. So inside this div, I have positioned that object at absolute bottom location. So it came at this bottom location. Okay, let's give it certain border so we can see it. So I can give it border, and okay, in fact, let's give it border radius, border with a radius. Okay, starting from 0 pixel with 0 pixel, then 5 pixels from the left, from bottom, and I guess 5 pixels from the right. So if I hit save, now there should be a small bottom area that you can see. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a very small minor bottom area. Let me just give it a width to be almost, for example, 99%, if it works. So now the border should be around that 99% mark. So if I zoom into it a little bit, hopefully you can see that border area marked here almost at 99%. Usually you can set it to 100%, but it will go beyond it because we have done some of the rounding off, so we don't need it at 100%. Usually if I do that, the border will go outside this rounded area and cover the shadow, which we don't usually like. So we sometimes set it to 99.5 or something, and again we will play with these values as you go along. Okay, once you are done with this thing, now let's just go and give it some height, height height as well. 35 pixel was my notes say. So depends on how big you want it to be. Let's back it to 100%, and then once we have it, let's work with that. Okay, let me give it the background so we can see it more clearly. So let me go inside the background dash color, and let's make it aqua for now, and now you can see the border more prominently. Now in our case we had a black border, so for that usually we use or we can use something called RGB. Okay, bracket start, bracket close, and then 24 comma 24 is the value that is specified for a black dark gray border. So you can use this thing as well. You can use a simple background color, dark gray, or any color attributes. Now, but remember, RGB is a function that uses an RGB function value that you can specify. I tend to avoid it. I tend to use it, for example, blackish, dark blackish gray, but sometimes this just works fine for us. And once we have the background, we can specify the color to be, for example, Alice blue. Yeah, that should do the trick. So we have now that particular background color information available for us. Okay, with this thing, let me give it some padding and topping as well. So I will give a padding top. Let's just make it 10 pixel. So it has a space from the top, 10, or maybe let's bring it to 15. So it appears at the middle, and then it starts right from the corner. So we want some space to be here. So for that, let me give a padding. Oops, go back, hit a semicolon, come back here, padding left, and this padding can be again 10 pixels, start from the 10 pixels, or maybe let's give it 15. Okay. So now what these two padding does is it gave it a space from 10 pixel to 10 pixel space, okay, from top and from left, so the text appears at the bottom. You can give a text size as well. So if you want to give it more of a space, a font size, for example, font size, and we can have it, for example, 20 pixel. Usually that should help me out, or 24. See this? So it depends how big you want. So if you want a larger font, making sure that your space is again allocated so it doesn't look out of the centered, right? So I have now my plans for holiday, and this button is there. Okay. Now what we need to do now is we need to have it this button being placed at this top right corner. Okay. And as you can see, this border is already covered, so let me just make it smaller. I think 95, 98. Now you can see. So see, you need to play with these values. So initially I had set it to 99.5. So if I even maximize it, see this, it's overlapping and going across it. Now what I do is I said, okay, I don't like this. Instead of having that, now I play with these values, and maybe 99, and I said no, still it's not. Still it's overlapping, and then you just basically check the values at which you find that this being almost perfect. So at this point 98.8 is perfect. Now we need to have this button. So if I go back inside my code, I have an A tag, and inside the A tag I have an image of that arrow, and now I need some text content as well. Okay, so if I go back inside the code here, it says see the article. Now what this basically means is that it needs us to have that article text as a reference. So I go back inside my code, and after the A tag I will use C article as a text, Control S. So now I have a C article content here with an arrow coming after that content, and I want this to be as a button. Okay, so I will go inside my code here, and what I do is I set up it as a class is equals to, oh, I already have a class, let me say red button button. Okay, so what I did now is I specified this A tag as a specific class, so I can control this button separately and give it a CSS almost as this thing. So in order to do that, now what we do is we come back into my CSS code again very quickly, go back here, and now what I will do is I will try to assign the CSS for my red button. So now we come back into code and we say dot red button. Okay, so this now is my CSS code for my what we call button. The first thing is we call it the display, and I want it to be inline blocks so that it appears in the same line. Once we have that, let me give it a height parameter. Usually it depends on how big the button you want to be. Again, we will temper with this. So for now I just set it to 30 pixels. Then positioning is important, so we set it to absolute value so that it's absolute position, it doesn't change with respect to the change in the body. The right side can be from 5 pixels so that the button moves to the right side, okay, leaving 5 pixels here. So this is the positioning, absolute positioning, so that it's like an absolute stick position. Do not change it, be exactly at the same point with 5 pixels involved. So now it moves it to that, leaving 5 pixels from the point. So for example, if I set it to 25, there's a 25 pixel gap. So if I set it to, for example, 65, now there's a 65 pixel gap. So it depends on how you basically want to set it. I set it at like 15 pixels, that should do the trick for me. So we set it position to absolute, that be at a fixed position, but where? On the right side. So these two actually need to go in a particular order to ensure that they work perfectly. So first we specify the position, then we specify that from the right, leave 15 pixels on. So it moves to the right with absolute position, and now we are here. Once we are here, let me give it a bottom pixel, that leave a space at the bottom. Maybe this can be 10 pixels. Okay, so there's a 10 pixels from the bottom as well. We can set the background. Okay, and the background can be a red color, but if I double check, see, this is a gradient effect. Okay, and for this I downloaded a gradient red button background. I don't know whether you can see this or not. Zing, right? So sorry, here it is. So if I zoom into it, oops, here we go. So you see this is a simple gradient bar. So it's a dark here and it goes inside the light. It's a very small 2 pixel width bar that we created in Photoshop, and then I just copy this and then paste it in my images folder where I had all other things created for my red background. So for the button, I can use the color as well. So for example, let me show you with the color as well. So I can say background dash color, and I can say red, or let me just give it a brown, semicolon, control S. Where's my code gone? So you see this option here available. But if you give it as a background and then you specify it as a URL, and then within the URL you use images, and I say red background, control S. So now see it appears more like a button. So if I remove the color, and now it appears more like a button with a dark and a shaded gradient effect with it. Okay, and we can have it to be on repeat. So make sure it's REPEAT, repeat dash X. So this button is actually repeating on X direction. Okay, so this means that on X axis this image is repeating, it's not going on Y direction. So in X, one single bar is actually repeated multiple times to create a complete button effect. Once you are done here, now let me just go and curl the borders up. So BORDER border dash radius. Again, border radius we use so that there is a radius on the border, and now you can see this, that there's automatically a curling effect that's occurred on the border. I like to use that a lot on the buttons and other things, so it creates a very nice kind of effect. Okay, now let's just give it a border. Colon is equals to, I want a 1 pixel border with a solid, and then the color can be, for example, white. Okay, and now you can see this is a white border color with a 1 pixel solid, right? I made it a white so it appears more apparent. You can change it to whatever you want to like. Okay, text align, sometimes we do that, and making sure the text is aligned on the center. Then we give it some padding, maybe 2 pixel in X, then 2 pixel in Y, and okay, so 2 pixels. Now usually we give it 4 values, so this can be, for example, 0 pixels, and I can give it, for example, 5 pixels, semicolon. Now this basically means we give it 4 values, and let me give it like this way. So this is like left, top, right, and bottom. Okay, so what this basically means, the 2 pixels from the right, 5 pixels from the top, 2 pixels from the 0 pixels from the right, and then we need basically 5 pixels at the bottom. So sometimes we just set this in this particular order. So again, this is all CSS styling. This is not necessary, it depends on what you want to do. I have certain aspects of doing some things on the button. So some piece of codes, we already set it up and write it down, so we use that. Now color, obviously I don't like the color of the text. Let me just use the same Alice blue that I use for this text. Okay, so now it becomes more apparent. And the underline, I also don't like that, so just get rid of it using text decoration is equals to none. Okay, and as soon as you do that, now you see you have your button available. Okay, perfect, very nice. The only point is I see a black bar at the bottom, which I don't like. Let's see what we have done here. Something maybe padding top left. If I increase this, I think if I set it to 8 pixels and then this set it to 8 pixels. Nope, radius, border radius is supposed to be 5 pixels, and top, right, bottom, maybe reduce that to 5. Okay, this is just the positioning. This is too much. 5, I think 8, that's the center. Height is 30 pixels. Let me just say maybe reduce it to 25. Yes, there we go. Okay, so as you can see this, I'm just playing with some of the values to see and get the feel correctly done. So previously, for example, the height was 30 pixels and it was just creating that black effect. I'm not working in my order, So I just reduce it to 25, and now we have a perfect button available. So this is again the CSS that we use to create this kind of a button. So if you need a red button, basically we have the codes, we specify this thing anywhere we want, and I have a button for that. So now once I click on it, it's a link, it will work for me. And obviously I can set it as a hover button. So once I click on it, the image basically appears to be moving or something of that sort. Okay, so I can do one thing is I can go into red BUTTN button space img. So the image inside this button, when I set it to border is equals colon is equals to 0. So what that should do is once I click on it, so it has a 0 border available, and I can also set this image to be changing. So when I hover it, it behaves like a different thing. Okay, so I can have dot red BUTTN button colon HOVER hover, and then we have a code. So once we are there, what we can do is we can change the color to, for example, bluish, brownish, greenish. Let's do that. Okay, so once you here see the color changes, you can do that. Obviously I have a background image set to it. You can have a different background image to it. So once your cursor moves over it, the background image changes and it appears like the button is being pressed or whatever you want to do with that. Okay, so once we are done with it, now we are done with it. So now you can see this, my top bar is complete with my entire menu looking very nice. Okay, finally let's come back to the body. Okay, lots of work, lots of CSS to go through again. So now the basic idea of working with CSS is again same. We create the body style tag. Okay, for the body style tag we specify components that are basically being used within my body tag. So if I come inside my body tag, now remember we have section. Inside the section we have articles and aside. So what we do is we go inside the CSS, and I said okay, use article, ARTICLE article, and oops. So once we are in the article, what do we want the article to be? Okay, so I say okay, let me make it display as inline block. Okay, as soon as you start to work with it, you would see that it creates some components. So vertical alignment, I need it to be top. Okay, what this will do, it will show that the vertical alignment of the component is set at the top. One other thing I can do is article and comma aside as well. I want the same settings for the both. Okay, so aside and article, because I want both of them to be on the top and side by side to each other. So these basic settings we basically want to apply on both of these. Okay, so this is my article area, this is my side area. So what I do, I apply the same settings on both. So for both, I need to have display inline block, so they appear in line with each other, and alignment to be vertically on top. That should do the trick. And then text align, I can have it as justified semicolon. So this becomes the basic 3 default settings that I want to apply on both of these things. Then I can use article again, and let me make some specific article based settings. So let's just bring this guy up a little bit. Okay, so for article specific, I want the width, width, width to be, now this is a tricky thing, how much the width needs to be. Usually I can work with, for example, 75% and then leave the side for 25%, right? So 75% and 25%, 100% of the page is covered. Let's work with that later on and see how we can emphasize with that. The margin on the right, okay, needs to be, for example, 15 pixels, and then we will play with it. Now what this basically means that the space between the side and the article area, okay, so the space between the side and the article area, this thing, so 15-20 pixels, need to worry and see how it goes. Okay, so this becomes the article. Then what we need to do is we need to work with the components of this article. So for example, I can say the aside. So for now, I go inside the aside, and aside needs position. to be where? Relative. Okay, the relative means it needs to be at the relative position from its previous predecessor. Once we do that, now the width, for this time I need to ensure it's like 25%. Again, this is something that I will play with later on, or maybe just 20%. So let's make it a little bit side. So now you see this, it's coming to this particular point. So 70% can be this thing. Okay, so it's not occupying the entire page. 70% is this and some 20%, so 90% is being covered. I'm leaving 10% for the margins and the spaces. So here we go about the author, and we get this aside coming on the point. Okay, once we are here, let's just change the background, and background color can be #333. There we go. I remember this thing. So this 333 is the shortcut code for the dark gray. I can make this 30%. Whoops. 25%. Okay. So I want this to be a little bit bigger though. Now you can reduce this and, for example, make it 60, and then give it this guy more space, like 30%. Okay. So this is more 30% and this is 20%. I think I can go for 35 as well. Yes. Okay, depending on the page size. So now you see, oh, this is too big and this is too small, but because I have a larger screen, it might be okay. So let's just leave it to 30% of this thing, and I will just go for 65% of this width of this blog area. Then we can temper the positioning later on. And this is where actually Bootstrap is more useful. We will talk about Bootstrap in next videos. Bootstrap basically allows us to control these positioning very easily. You know, that's the major advantage of it. You position the components very easily, and it handles everything as it goes. Okay, so what I know, I go inside and apply some box shadow. I have a setting that basically works for me. That's 0 pixels, 2 pixels, then 5 pixels, and then I specify the color as, for example, dark gray. Okay, so it creates that shadowy effect. I should create that shadowy effect. 0 to 5 with it, and then I give it a border dash radius to give it that curling effect where my effects will be. So you can see this now, it's more curling round like a panel with a very light shadow appearing at the bottom, and voila. Once we are done here, let me give it some padding as well, so the contents inside it have a 10 pixel padding. And now you can see this, that it's jumping here because since we added the padding, it's moving. And if I increase the size of the page, here we go. So this should be all okay. Now, because we have given this size in terms of percentage, its values is in percentage. You can give it a fixed value. So for example, 200 pixels. What this would basically meaning that now this is a fixed 200%. Okay, if I just come back here, this is fixed 200% aside. Sometimes that might work as well. So for your article area, I can go, for example, like 75%. Okay, so this is 75%. But as soon as I give my area, this is now 200 pixels fixed, depending on how basically you want to set it up. Now again, because 75% it has reduced, so it jumps down here, making it a little bit responsive. Again, responsive is not our target, but that's basically what it's doing. So for our sake, I will leave it to 250 pixels, so it has more, or in fact, let me just go for 300. Let's see if I can spare that. Not 3300 pixels width should do the trick. So if I go back here, that's a good width for it. Okay, and then let me just go back into this point. Okay, so once we have that padding available, obviously the color I can change it to, so the text appears to be again Alice blue. I kind of like that thing. And font size, let's just use font dash size to be 12 pixels. I think that's too small already, right? 16 pixels, that should do the trick. So now my aside is also clearly set. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to go inside our components. Okay, these images are already too big. We can control their size from my HTML as well. So here we go. If I come here, I can specify the width to be, for example, 25 pixel, and there you go, it's a 25 pixel. I said that's a too small. Let me just use 100 pixel. That's a too big. 50 pixel, nah, reasonable. Let me just go for a 60 pixel. Control C, and then I can use the width here. I can use the width here. Control C. Now you see all this is basically set up based on the components that I have available. Ready? Perfecto mundo. So now we go back inside the blog area. And article, I think I have not given this a color, so let me just give it a background color to be same as basic. Here we go. So it appears to be more of a image on the side, and now you can see this. You have your components, you have your setup things, and all these things are basically working nicely. Finally, let's just go and give it a footer value. So FOOT of footer. Okay, the footer needs to have a background. Background, where's my back? GROUND dash color. Oops. Background color to be 3333. Okay, and then I can say padding can be from top to be approximately 30 pixel. Okay, so what this will mean, that should mean that I have a padding back footer is available. Where's my footer gone? Ah, okay, we have not created the footer yet. Okay, so this is a section, this is the division. Here's the footer. Okay, and inside the footer basically we need to have certain components that are required to be placed. Okay, so you can place them. In other words, we can say I create one div. Let me give it a class, and for example it can be div foot. Okay, oops. Okay, inside this div I give a h1. This is footer div, and I can give a paragraph. This is footer, let me just say this is blog example code from Zynga. I think let's just lose it here. Okay, and you get the basic idea. And obviously you can put an image inside this as well, have an icons like we have in our here content area. So this was supposed to be my footer area with particular pictures and components. So you can have this my blog, and I can create another div that can have images inside it, and I can use that as well. Okay, so once we are done here, I go back inside my code, and this time you can see my blog is basically working, and I can give it more content. So footer is there. I can use footer h1. So the h1 inside the footer can have, for example, font dash size to be, let's just say 20 pixel. Okay, or let's just give it a little bit more space. So basic idea is you can control it. You can specify the color to be again Alice blue. I've been using this color throughout. So the same concept now you use the styles that you want, you use the tags that you want to use, and apply those styles on those particular tags. This is how basically we want to work with that. Similarly, div foot, we created a class there. I can use this to be as display. One thing would be inline block. Okay, and vertical alignment I would usually use as top. What this will basically mean that you can see this, if you can have an idea, there is one block here. So if I come back inside my code and copy this div here and come back and paste it, and let me just copy these images. So I take these paragraph and images that I used here, and for now I'm just duplicating it here instead of this line. Control S, so I have these images. So you can see this, there's a blocks available just for the demo purpose, just like this. So find these three images, my pictures, and I can have used this. This is, and I can change my SOCIL. Follow me on social media, right? Follow me on social media. Here you go. So follow me on social media is there, and I have an images available. Then I go back inside the CSS. Oops, save it and go back inside the CSS. Okay, so I have a div foot available. I use this div foot for a block value. A vertical alignment is there. You can give it a padding, you can give it some space as well. So for example, I can say margin dash left can be 10 pixels. Okay, so there is a space between these two blocks, or maybe 20 pixel, so there's a space between these two pixel blocks as well. And then we can give it a padding, maybe padding left, which can again be 10 pixels. So there is some space between the components. So if I scroll up, you can see this. Now I have a website that basically contains this entire sections. So with the footers, with the sidebars, and with the menu, obviously the more text you add, the more face blending it would create. Okay, so let me close it here. If I see here, this is the basic requirement. Obviously the page is entirely yellow, we have a white background available. So what I can do for that purpose is that, I can come back here and if I come back here, let me write a body tag. Okay, so now I specify an attribute for the body, and this can be my background color can be this beseech. Okay, here we go. So once I specify something as a body, so everything is now in a yellow background, making it look like a fantastic thing. Okay, content depends on the color. For example, in this case is black, and the font is something different. I've used the standard font. You can use whatever font you want. You can change the fonts as well. Just Google something. You can change the font family and font color with it. So now if I come back here, we got all the components basically ready. Okay, obviously this is the screen size is a little bit bigger, so the components are stretching, but if you got the idea, here we go. So now my blog website is basically created with my content, my header, my buttons, my side panel, and my content area with my footer areas. Rest, you can spend more time and customize this as much as you like. Once you have this template, you save it, you just change the content area, all the links should work fine. So hopefully you understand it. Playing around with the CSS and the components is essential.